All right, guys, we have Thursday's Lunch and Learn here. We're really excited to have our good friend, Kelly Price with Wintrust Mortgage. A little bit about Kelly is, one, everyone knows Kelly. Everyone knows she's a very reputable broker out there that does, depending on the year, anywhere from $40 to $50 million in production. What's cool about Kelly's team is it consists of herself, a client production manager, plus a dedicated processor, right, Kelly?
Absolutely.
Underwriter, and underwriter at all the closings, right? Each program you have has a little bit of a niche. Is that correct?
Sure. Yep.
So talk about like your team structure a little bit. Are you guys, if you give us a visual, are you guys sitting next to each other? Or are you guys like, is this like a little huddle of a team, or how do you guys operate?
We're not in any kind of a tripod. So it's myself and my client production manager.
Okay.
We're kind of the face of our team, if you will. And then I've got a processor for certain lanes. But my main processor, who's been with me for almost 10 years, I call her my mama bear. She is, once we get everything underway and we've got underwriting going on, she's going to help hold that glue together on the deal, where my client production manager and myself are going to continue to be the face to everybody that needs updates along the way.
Got it. Okay. And because you work for Wintrust, right? That's a full service bank. You have thousands of others who support your networking needs, right? Commercial, business, investments, estate planning, and more, right? So you guys are full service bank.
Yes, so I'm the best of both worlds. I'm a broker and I'm a banker. That's always been my mortgage lending career. And so what that means is Wintrust has just about every mortgage product out there.
Mm-hmm.
And then for my business, about 75% of it is business owners. And so it's a very big deal to have commercial partners, business lending partners. So that kind of goes hand in hand with what I do, and we overlap a lot.
So Kelly, what I know of you in any of our interactions is I know that you're very client service, right? And that you base a lot of your business on integrity, which is awesome. A lot of us here on the phone are Keller Williams agents, and we obviously believe in integrity as well. So, because you concentrate on the client experience, communication, and education, how are you adapting to what's going on right now?
So I'm really, Joe, just applying some of the same values that I run my business by, and that's transparency. In my opinion, the good Midwest motto of "give it to them straight." Right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
I didn't build my business on sugarcoating and over promising and under delivering. It's the here's what's going to happen. Here's what it's going to feel like.
Mm-hmm.
So that changes a little bit post pandemic. What that feels like. But really just setting expectations properly with people, trying to keep a certain level of professionalism because these are stressful times for people. My side of the business is money, right? I'm dealing with people's money. So professionalism is important. So is confidentiality. And then there's that, personal touch that you still have to bring a little bit of humor to what can be stressful times to make sure that it feels real, that it doesn't feel very foreign. It gets scary when it feels foreign.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Kelly, what about personally? What do you like to do? How do people? Who is Kelly Price? Personal
Well,
level.
she doesn't have a bunch of pets. She has no children.
Okay.
She likes to be social when she can go out and play. And so I like to golf. I like sporting events. I like, Chicago cuisine and bars and music, arts, you name it. And I love to travel. So
Good.
I will be one of those people that if I don't finish booking my airline stock soon, I will be at least booking flights soon.
Yeah, right. It's really cheap to go places right now. So where's the coolest place you've ever traveled to, Kelly?
Probably the 2-week honeymoon in South Africa from top to bottom.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Right? You do a safari and the whole deal? You did the safari?
Absolutely.
That's awesome. Cool. That's great. Cool. Awesome. So guys, remember, everyone's muted here and stuff like that. You can feel free to unmute yourself, but also light up the chat room. I will keep my eye on the chat room and of any questions that you guys have. Okay. On the, obviously Kelly's here in the lending world, in the mortgage business. Obviously this is what Kelly's specialty is. So we can ask any questions to her there. All right. So Kelly, let's get started on that. talk to us about, how you run your business. Okay. So a lot of the format that this has been going through is, one, not only how you run your business, but how do you approach your business? So meaning, like, what is your mindset pre-pandemic and what is your mindset now as far as how you're approaching your business world?
I think when I think of mindset, Joe, I think of attitude, right? The attitude around how we approach business all the time. And hang on, I wrote some notes that I didn't want to forget to say about my mindset.
Mm-hmm.
But it's, one of the things that in pre-pandemic, right? It's mindset around the attitude and the opportunity. Real estate is investing. Mortgage debt is also kind of a reverse way to look at investing, right? You have to spend money. So you have to take on debt, right? To build equity and make money. And so my mindset is around positive opportunities all the time, regardless of pre-pandemic and post-pandemic. Pre-pandemic, we were all feeling really good, right? It was every other week we were hearing Trump talk about, because it's an election year, about how great the economy is, right? Yeah. And now all of a sudden, post-pandemic, it's starting to feel like gloom and doom very quickly. And I'm trying to take on that perspective of keeping the glass half full, keeping a positive attitude. When we're in times like this, Joe, and I think you and I've been in the business long enough to have survived a mortgage crisis in the past. Yeah. And I'm not calling it a mortgage crisis yet, but it could be a mortgage crisis of 2020. And what really, I think, leads the charge on any kind of crisis is fear. And so my recommendation for people in howing to deal with fear isn't necessarily from a mortgage background, but I have some training in corporate crisis management. And I think just in life in general is what you do with the fear, right? Do you let fear guide your decisions and how you invest and how you handle your home and real estate? Right. It's taking the fear out of the equation to be able to make a decision that might be advice that you'd give yourself, but you would, look at it like you're going to give advice to a friend. Right. If a friend comes to you, Joe, and says, what should I do? Which I'm sure all of your clients are doing. They're asking you because they don't feel emotionally stable to, make that themselves. Maybe they're being driven by fear and things that they're hearing, and friends or family that are sick, or all their friends are losing their jobs. How do you take the fear out of the equation to analyze something from a calm perspective and to make a decision on a bigger scale than just the now, to make a broad decision, a broad analysis? Everyone, I think, knows that it's not permanent, but are they behaving as if though this is permanent or isn't permanent?
That was awesome. I'm glad that we're recording this. This is great. Let's I'm so glad that you said that. So let's dive into this. Okay. So there's 2 points that I want to talk to you about. One, what is the difference now what in your eyes, what's the difference now from what is happening now to what happened in 2008? What's the major difference?
What started it? 2008, there was a bubble. Things were too good to be true. There were aggressive lending habits. There was, overinflation in the market. It was the housing industry that caused that pandemic. This one is coronavirus driven. I mean, it's put fear into not only our homes, but into forecasting and productivity. So even when things were happening, I mean, coronavirus didn't hit the US until, the last 30 days. It was happening globally. And what happens, most of us know that what happens in China happens in the US eventually, or vice versa. And so what had already started to happen was happening from a productivity perspective and forecasting. I had people calling me, Joe, the first week of March, telling me they had already lost their jobs. Well, how does that happen if we're not operating in a global economy? Right. So it's the forecasting and the fear of productivity, or the forecast of knowing what's going to happen, how many people are going to be sick, and what people can afford to do and not afford to do, and how our lives are going to change where we're, working remotely. That's what's starting this, and it's going to be a different outcome. I have no idea what that outcome is going to be, but I definitely know that in any crisis, it's how we handle it.
Kelly, I didn't think about this until now when you just said this, but, in our world, in the real estate world, most of us are real estate agents. We have some stagers, and, Haven staging consultations are they're here a lot. So thanks, Haven, for being here. But you know, we kind of saw like our world change on like March 15th, right?
Sure.
Rough date. You said that you were seeing some people losing their jobs in March. How early did you kind of sense that this could happen or something like that? Something like this would go on?
Well, when mortgage interest rates tank
Yeah.
overnight, something's happening that is
Right.
much bigger than myself.
Yeah.
So that was a massive fear and panic in the financial markets
Got it.
that tanked interest rates, that sent interest rates dove that first week of March. Literally, we had interest rates that nobody could believe for a day and a half, which merited a tidal wave of application volume that nobody was prepared to handle. Because typically what happens end of year in the mortgage industry is, depending on volume and where the year turns out, mortgage companies tend to let go people.
Right.
That's just kind of a cleansing of the process, right? In
Yeah.
any corporation, they're reanalyzing for the next fiscal year. So I don't want to say anybody got caught with their pants down, but they definitely got caught unprepared to handle a tidal wave of application volume the first week of March. And so then what happened, call it, St. Patrick's Day,
Hmm.
interest rates skyrocketed because everyone freaked out and mortgage companies couldn't handle the volume. And
Right.
then the financial markets had a massive fear of, what was going to default,
Yeah.
because people were already starting layoffs. And so rates went from under 3%, and I'm using the 30-year fix as a margin here,
Yeah.
to over 5%. And
Okay.
so it's been fun because in the midst of that, the feds were cutting the rates. So we've had lots of conversations with people about no, mortgage rates weren't cut to 0% or 1%. Yes, they were under 3%. Now they're way back up. And now, oh, wait, they're back down.
Yeah. Right.
So
Okay.
it's been a lot of miscommunication out there because it takes time to get out to the public what's really happening.
Kelly, I know, and it says on your biography too here that it says like you're an educator, right? So when that hit you and everyone saw that, hey, the Fed's going to drop the interest rates and stuff like that, and they all thought, oh my God, my home interest rates are going. How did you educate people, and like what was your strategy there as far as letting people know, no, this actually isn't happening?
To be honest, Joe, it was, I was in crisis mode. I mean, it was reaction mode. It was, 10 to 12 hour day phone calls.
Right.
I wish there would have been a PSA, that I could have put out, but the industry has been changing so quickly.
Yeah.
And there's so much uncertainty that from a corporate perspective, to put something out there when it could literally change, not a day later, it could change an hour later. We were seeing interest rates. Interest rates, typically lenders get a set of interest rates every day, just to give you an example of the change.
Yeah.
We were getting interest rate changes anywhere from 3 to 10 times a day.
Yeah.
Up and down, up and down.
Okay.
So it was really difficult to put out an announcement to really let people know what's going on because it was changing so rapidly. Now I'd say we're not as much in crisis mode as we are the new norm.
Yeah, are you guys like in the lending world right now? It seems like, is there just like kind of a calmness now? Is it just kind of, this is the norm, this is what's going on?
Um,
I guess calmness might not be the best word, but
I was gonna say, I guess if you were in a boxing ring
yeah,
and you had a boxing match, at the end of it, win or lose, you walk away with a ton of adrenaline,
yeah,
and then you hit that low after you've peaked your high. Yeah, that's kind of where everybody is right now. Everyone's kind of hitting their stride on the pace.
What about forecasting? Okay, so being a bunch of realtors on, typically in your virtual audience here, how are you forecasting for your business, and what do you think is going to be due to maybe some, applicate or pre-approvals that you're issuing to loan apps? How has that changed over the last couple of weeks, or how has that changed from this past March to March 2019? Like, what is your forecast looking like?
Well, as far as pre-approvals are concerned, Joe, and I think that's what everybody wants to know, is pleasantly, I'm surprised that we are still doing pre-approvals, and it's picking up. It's getting back to a consistent level. And what I think consistent level is, I'm doing pre-approvals every day.
Oh,
As
yeah.
a lender, as somebody that cares, to be quite frank, more about purchase business than refi business, you don't build a solid business on refinances. If you're a lender and you're building your business on refinances, you're not going to be around for long term.
Yeah.
You've got to know how to get through every different type of an economic position. And so the first couple weeks of March, we were focused on making sure that business was closing as usual, because title companies obviously were telling people you can't go there now, right?
Right.
You have, and then it was the refi boom. And so there was kind of a quiet period the first half of March. And
Mhm.
I would say it's steadily picked up the last week and the first week of April, where we're back to doing pre-approvals on a daily basis, back to doing weekend consultations, evening consultations. And every single person I'm talking to, I'm literally, commending them for continuing to, people have goals, right? This is spring market. Let's
Right.
not forget about the fact that we're all supposed to be, this is supposed to be our busiest time of year, right?
Sure.
And so, commending the people that haven't let this take them off track, right? People are still having weddings, they're still getting married, they're still having babies. Everybody's still doing all of those life events. It just feels a little bit different. And so I think the best thing realtors can do is reassure them that life is definitely still going to go on. We want to make it as normal as possible.
Yeah, a lot of the scripting you're hearing from, at least realtors that I'm talking to is, hey, what has changed outside of, what if we're just going to talk about you wanting to buy a home,
Mhm.
outside of, the coronavirus, what has changed? Do you still want to buy a home?
Right.
Right? So if we take if we take the coronavirus away, you still want to buy a home. Is that correct? So that's a lot of the scripting that I'm using, right? And they're kind of like, yeah, now obviously what is the impact of the coronavirus comes up next and things like that. But we have articles out there, hey, there's going to be a pent up demand, things are going to happen. When you have consultations, Kelly, and you're having you said evenings and weekend consultations, what's the mindset of your people? Because sometimes as a realtor, they want to hear something from us, and then they go to their money person and they want to hear something different from them. So
True.
what are you hearing the mindset is of the consumer out there right now in your consultations?
Well, so one of the things I'm going to preface by saying, Joe, one of the things I love about my job, it is the people. So I always get into what people do for a living to have a better understanding of compensation, affordability, because you all probably know that what we see on paper or not isn't always what we can use.
Mhm.
And so this is a time period when people are concerned about job stability. And so, perfect example, last night I spoke to two different people in the healthcare field. I spoke with an architect. I spoke with someone in the retail world. And so, as I'm having conversations with these people that have different professions, it's how stable do you feel in your job right now? And how is that impacting what you're planning to do?
Mhm.
Can you afford to buy on, if it's a dual income household, can you afford to buy and pay housing on one person's salary? That's not always the case for everybody.
Right.
But by and large, I'm trying to ask the questions to get them to think about stuff that if they're not thinking about it now, it's going to come up later. And the last thing you want is them being worried about it after they've already written the offer and signed the deal. And
Right.
now they're nervous, right? Because I've had that. I've had people, I'm sure some of the realtors on this chat today have had people go under contract
Yeah.
and they've either lost their jobs or I had one gal, first time home buyer. She was getting down payment assistance. We were 3 days away from closing. Her family made the decision to close the family business. And rather than moving into her new home, she did something very honorable, got out of her contract and went to live with her parents to basically provide for their household until they could figure out how to support their family again.
Right.
Now, that's a buyer that's definitely coming back to the market, but somebody that had to make a decision to back out.
Yeah, they had to make the short-term decision, right?
Yep.
Of like, this is what we had to do. Benjamin Turbo asked a great question here. What is the price point for the pre-approvals that are being issued recently? Are you seeing a change in the price points?
A little bit, just because I think the word's gotten out that jumbo lending is not as lucrative. That non-QM, which is outside of the box jumbo lending, is not as easy to come by.
Mhm.
When the market's strong, people want to give out money. When it's not, people don't have to give out money because they want to hang on to their own money. So it's your conforming loan sizes, definitely. Um, I still have people in a jumbo pre-approval market that are out there shopping. but they're of the mindset that they're going to find better deals right now. So I've got my 1 million to 2.5 million buyers out there shopping that are taking a little bit of a back seat going, let's see how ripe this gets. But
Right.
that's been, luxury sales in Chicago, Joe. It's been that way for a little while, right? It's been
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
slower sale.
Yeah. We've
So
seen
I
that.
don't know that that's a change
Yeah.
at all.
Seen that for a year and a half or so.
Yep.
There's some questions coming in that I'm gonna get into, but before I look at those, I want to ask you, can you give clarity on what's going on with the jumbo market right now? Like, there's a lot of, oh, you can't get a jumbo loan, oh, you can't, like whatever. What I know you're giving the perspective of Wintrust, but what's your perspective on the jumbo market?
Well, the saleswoman in me says, call Wintrust because we're doing jumbo lending all day long.
Hmm.
We have, like I said, I'm the best of both worlds. So we're a bank. We have a portfolio, which means I don't want to say we make up the guidelines, but we control the guidelines. We don't have to sell those loans on the secondary market. So we're doing a lot of business that way. So I know that I will always have an option. Whether those are lucrative interest rates are on a case-by-case basis. But non-QM is a mortgage that it's not a qualified mortgage. That means that it doesn't meet strict guidelines that are set around, call it debt ratios. That's a big thing. Reserves, so money in the bank. Money in the bank is going to be, money in the bank after closing, and reserves is going to be something that unfortunately we're going to start hearing a lot about.
Yeah.
Because having money in the bank after closing when unemployment is a real issue, and it
Yeah.
will be a bigger issue. Data is starting to come out on how big of an issue that is. So yeah, keeping a hold of cash is important. Before I forget to say this too, Joe, and I want to make sure that readers hear this, is that in a good economy, people make their own choices with their money. In a bad economy, people should consult people more often on their money. And what I mean by that is, um, people are going to be making decisions out of fear. They're going to be making rash decisions. They're going to feel like they have to pay off all of their credit cards because what if they lose a job and they can't pay their credit cards? They're going to feel like they need to move their investments because their investments are losing money. These are not necessarily wise decisions. They should, contact a lender, have a consultation. They could be indirectly disqualifying themselves because they felt as though they had to pay off credit card debt when they really should have just held their money and kept it in reserves because they're going to need that type of thing to qualify. And that is 100% applicable to your first-time home buyer buying a $150,000 property or your, $2.5 million first-time home buyer.
Got it.
Reserves are going to be key.
Is there a
And
new metric, Kelly? Is there a new metric to reserves that you think is going to that the banks are looking to see? Like, is it like, hey, we want to make sure now they might say we want to make sure you have 6 months of reserves? Are you seeing that?
yeah, that's a magic number. Spoken like a true lender, Joe. 6 months, six
Right.
months is accurate. I'm seeing credit scores go up. Our government loans, so like our FHA and VA loans, credit score bars are being raised, and with that raise, they're saying that if you have credit scores under, let me give you an example. If you have a credit score on a Govy loan, in some cases under 660, you're going to be asked to show more reserves. When in the past, you didn't have to have money in the bank. Most people know that, for example, a VA loan is 100% financing.
Right.
FHA, they're really non-discriminatory. If you got enough money to close, you're usually good most times with FHA. But
Yeah.
the lower people's credit ratings, the more money they're going to have to show, which is always a challenge. So that's why I say counseling and consulting
Mhm.
sooner than later is
Yep.
huge.
And you act as a consultant for your people, right? You're
100% of the time.
Yep. Okay, cool. Emma is asking here, is jumbo lending not as easy because Freddie and Fannie aren't buying on the secondary market?
That is a bit of a tricky question. I'm going to try to answer that because I think I understand where it's coming from. So Freddie and Fannie specifically control our world, the conforming world. Okay. And that conforming is not the jumbo world. So in the jumbo world, although they're private investors, they have their own set of guidelines. And so although they're very much so in line often with what Freddie and Fannie dictate, that is not why jumbo loans are getting harder to come by. It's because the private investors that that back these loans or that actually buy these loans, there's not enough capital in the market. There's not enough liquidity in the market. They're worried that this debt has a higher rate of default because big trees fall hard, right? So just because you can afford $1 million loan today because you're a successful business owner doesn't mean your business just went belly up because you had to close the doors.
Yeah, got it.
So it's a different strategy.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. Our main man, Matt Neistat here says, are you seeing a change in appraisals, and how are they valuing them? Yeah, I mean, the appraisal world's a little, are they scared right now, Kelly? Appraisers?
The appraisers?
Yeah.
Well, those guys used to be my best friends, Joe. I haven't been able to talk to them in years,
Yeah.
only because we can't influence value. We can't call an appraiser and say, hey, I really need a solid 550 here.
Sure.
But the world of appraisal lending has been changing for some time. Really cool for those of people who don't know it. We're getting appraisal waivers, which is fantastic for multiple reasons. Appraisal waivers are case-by-case basis. They are not for jumbo loans. They are for these conforming loan sizes where once somebody has an application in process, their overall credit profile in combination with their address and the stability around that market where their property is located, that will tell us if this automated system, which is judged by Freddie and Fannie, if it feels like there's stability in the market and we don't have to go do an appraisal. Not only does that save someone the health risk of having a stranger in their house, it saves them money. We flat out don't charge appraisals. But the exterior appraisals that are being done, the drive-bys that are being done, those are also on case-by-case basis. Again, not for the jumbo market, but they are being done. It is also important to know that people do still have to pay for an appraisal that is a drive-by or an exterior. You still have to pay someone for their time to go out there. Usually walkthrough appraisals are only, photos for 15, 20 minutes anyway. So that isn't changing as much. And then appraisers are doing 150% of what they can do to be cautious in people's homes.
Right.
Just like you guys were doing with open houses and turning on the lights for people, opening all the doors, making sure that nobody had to touch anything. That's our recommendation that people do when an appraiser has to come in. Open up your house. They're showing up with, face masks, gloves, taking proper precautions, not hanging out and chit-chatting like they usually would.
Yeah, that's makes sense, right?
Yep.
All right. Ann Rosen asked, she saw something about FICO scores and FHA. Can you speak to that?
Yeah. Hey, Ann. It's been a while. Yes, they're raising the bar. They are raising the bar on qualifying. And like I said earlier, if you have credit scores, I think the threshold is under 660, you could potentially be asked to have more in reserves. And now, not necessarily 6 months, but it could be 1 to 2 months, which, from an ethical lending perspective, making sure people have money in the bank afterwards, I think is always a good idea.
Yeah. Okay, good. Matt had a follow-up question. Have you heard anything about deferring loan payments? And if someone does it, can it stop them from getting a loan for 3 to 5 years? So yeah, I mean, I think this is a good subject to spend some time on, right? Not only outside of what Matt is asking, but right now, if people are losing their jobs and things like that, refinancing, what should they do? First we'll answer Matt's question, but then my follow-up question that is, what advice are you giving people that are going through hardships right now?
If you are, my always answer is if you're going through a hardship, you must contact your bank. Mm-hmm. Do not make decisions on your own because that will hurt you. And what I mean by that is last week we found out how many people did not make their mortgage payment in March. Yeah. And not only did they not make their mortgage payment in March, they didn't contact the bank. And so the bank is within their rights to report them late on their credit.
Do you remember what that number was, Kelly?
I think for Wintrust alone, it was 50% of our servicing portfolio. That's huge.
50% of the people.
15,
So that's
15, 1-5.
I was like, oh, that's way more than 2008.
No. Yeah. Okay. No, 15%. And we service a very large portion, but not all of our loans. So the mistake therein, Joe, was that there wasn't enough public information about what people can do, right? I wish I had a benchmark to tell you what a normal delinquency rate is monthly. 15% seems too high. But what they should have done and what they could have done, but nobody got the word out soon enough, is they should have called the bank to ask for forbearance. And so if someone is truly in a financial hardship that month or prior to that month, they should call the bank and ask to be put into forbearance, because the bank is not going to negatively report them in forbearance. So if someone is in forbearance, I believe right now they could get up to 6 months of forbearance. The right thing to do is if, for example, someone loses their job, they don't have other means, there's going to be a gap between when they get their unemployment and their stimulus check. They should be contacting the bank and unfortunately sitting on hold for as long as they have to until the bank will give them that forbearance status.
Yeah.
But I'm also getting a lot of calls for people that don't need to go in forbearance. And if they don't need to, they should find a way to make their mortgage payment. And here's why. What will happen down the road for those people that go into forbearance is that when you won't have your mortgage payment reporting to credit, right? Credit reports what's happening in the activity. It reports on-time payments. It reports late payments, but nothing's going to be happening, okay? Right. And so what will happen is if someone goes into forbearance for, let's say, 3 months, right? And then this fall, they've got a great job. They're ready to go finish their home ownership goal and they're ready to buy a new house. The issue is that banks are required, according to Freddie and Fannie and a lot of jumbo investors, we have to go back and confirm they've made their housing payment for the past 12 months.
Okay.
When we go to do that, we're going to contact that current mortgage creditor, and that mortgage creditor is going to tell us that they were in forbearance. Okay. And there's going to be a gap. And to be honest, I don't know what the ramifications are going to be, but it could mean they're not eligible until they can reprove a 12-month history. That, in my opinion, my humble opinion, and I am not the guideline maker, that could delay people, but not 3 to 5 years like a short sale or a foreclosure.
Okay, so for clarity though, okay, so let's walk through this scenario. And I think this is what Matt is asking is if Joe Zimmerman is, current on his mortgage payments, right? And never missed one. And then all of a sudden a commission check doesn't come in for the next 6 months and I missed 2 months, right? Will that impact me? And then I was like, wait, market's coming back, everything's gonna go, but I'm gonna sell my house, right? Will I be able to go get a loan? Does that have to get resolved?
I always tell people it's a matter of when. So I would not say to you, Joe, no. I would say you might not be eligible right now, and that could have to do with you getting your payments back on schedule.
Okay, got it. So there's really no there's no forgiveness of what's happening right now.
That is the magic question. Thank you for asking it. Mortgage payments are not forgiven. They are deferred. Forbearance is deferring what you owe to the bank, tacking it on the end of that loan. So it is not like the stimulus package. It is not like the SBA loans out there that are truly going to be forgiven, that are on a sidebar. Because again, a lot of my clients are business owners and I know realtors are business owners. Those SBA loans are not supposed to be having any kind of negative impact on credit whatsoever. That is a result of stimulus. Forbearance is something that the stimulus package is asking banks to do. Yeah. But banks still have to make mortgage payments. That's what a bank's relationship is with the secondary market. So it's deferred.
Yeah, got it. That's great. Matt, that answer your question? Thumbs up, bud? I could see you, Matt.
You got a yes, sir. Hey, Matt.
All right, there you go. He's typing that up. You have a good pulse on the market, right? We all know that. I mean, we're on the front lines as real estate agents, but so are you. You're up there with us. There's a lot of articles and speculation out there of pent up demand. What are you seeing, and what are you? If I was a buyer right now and called you up and said, "Hey, Kelly, I talked to my real estate agent, but I want to talk to you. What do you think? Should I buy now? And what do you think about the pent up demand?"
My answer is always going to be yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Always.
Yes.
I can elaborate on that.
Okay.
The answer is always yes, because or my answer is always yes, let's explore it, right? Yes, let's explore it. I would never have someone call me and say, "Oof, now is not the right time." Because if I share that and present that doom and gloom, it will multiply, right? And so the reality is everyone's going to be different. But what I try to do is I dig down. What's the fear? Why are they asking me? Why aren't they just calling me and telling me they want to buy a place, right? So let's get to the core of the fear. Is it job stability? Is it reserves? Susie Orman's like, hey, don't ever invest unless you've got, your reserves. And that's really just the world. We're just going to see an emphasis on that. Don't go spend a ton of money and clean out your bank account. Make sure that you're making an investment because you've got reserves to fall back on if something were to happen. Again, it's not going to last forever, right, Joe?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
people just need to have a bigger picture on it.
This is an opinion question that I'm going to ask you, Kelly. So we're not going to hold you to it again, but just your opinion. And I think this is where Ben Turbo was coming from as well. Do you think a shift like this reassets people's expectations of how much money they should be spending on homes? Meaning, you have a couple people that have, are doing well. You got dual income, but $1.5 million is a lot of money, right, to spend on a home. So do you think something like this that happens, a global event, and kind of puts things into perspective to people, your opinion, do you think that this kind of reassets people's expectations on pricing?
During times like this where finances get tighter for people, I see people who do not have tight finances get more conservative.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
But there's always going to be the people that are also living paycheck to paycheck. And there's always going to be kind of that level playing ground for what they have to spend to own a place.
Right.
The reason I try to provide comfort and perspective to people is we're in this perfect storm of what is presently stable home prices, right? I'm not seeing home prices decline. Are you?
Yeah, no. Prices are still there.
And we can still honestly say that interest rates are at all-time lows.
Right.
And so when you've got both of those things happening, especially with interest rates being at all-time lows, people always talk about refi. What we should be talking about is how much more that buys us, how much more buying power that brings to the table. And so what I say to people is you can be more conservative if you want to. I mean, I had a couple, again, dual income, stable employment. I was talking to Monday night and they were looking to buy between 400,000 and 600,000. And I said, okay, that's going to get you a different product, right? 400 and 600 in Chicago.
Sure.
And that 600 is probably going to get you what you want. 400 is probably going to be that house in a condo you live in for a couple of years that you're like, I didn't really buy what I wanted. And so the reality is I'm of the opinion that if you feel that you have job stability, leverage your buying power, because what you're going to afford at 3.25 is not going to be what you're going to afford at 4.25. The bigger the loan size, the drastic difference that is in hundreds of dollars on a monthly basis. So talking about what a perfect time it is to leverage your buying power, I think is key.
That's key. That's huge. Kelly, what sort of what rate? I know this is changing every day for you. Okay, so I don't want you to feel that you have to go through all of this. But as real estate agents here, what regulations should we be aware of that weren't here 2 weeks ago, or what could save a deal for us right now, or give some consumer confidence to us? What advice would you give us on that?
I can't say, Joe, I can't say that there's been any massive regulatory changes. There really hasn't. There's just been guideline changes. And I wish that I wrote down a couple of them. I wish that I could tell you guys with certainty something to be aware of. I think the biggest pool of people in financing that's been impacted, the Govy loans are going to get a little bit stricter. The non-QM jumbo, so lending outside of the box, has in many cases ceased. So if someone doesn't fit the box on certain deals, it's going to be harder to get a loan. So if there is a realtor who has someone who's wealthy that they can just take out shopping without a pre-approval, strongly encourage, regardless of the wealth of the client, encourage them to talk to the bank up front, because life as they knew it is not going to be as fluid. Cash outs, those are coming somewhat to a halt with jumbo loans. You can still do a cash out mortgage with Fannie and Freddie, so on your conforming loan sizes. Investment properties, that's going to get harder. That financing is going to be harder to come by in the jumbo world. in the jumbo world, I was doing 5% down, under $1 million, 10% down, 85% financing, no PMI. Those days, probably not going to be as fluid. People are going to have on bigger loan sizes, 20% down, which again is just, I hate to use the word ethical, but responsible, right? When the economy is good, it's okay to leverage. When it's not, you need more into it.
And Kelly, do you think something like that stays longer than just, hey, when the pandemic's done, we're gonna, unloosen our belt a little bit on that sort of financing, or do you think like, no, it will come back?
Well, one of my favorite things that we lost during the mortgage crisis, you probably remember the piggyback loan concept.
Oh yeah.
When we were, I call it the good old days, and this makes us sound real old, Joe.
Yeah.
But when we were doing like 80/20s,
Oh
you
yeah.
want 100% financing? We do the first mortgage at 80, the second on 20, bada boom, bada bing. And then there was
sometimes you'll walk away from the closing table with 10 grand. It will be beautiful.
Sweet, right?
Really
might have been something wrong about that.
Yeah.
People took it, right? So I'm laughing, but I'm not laughing because that was a part of what started that mortgage crisis. And interest onlys were out there. And it took a long time for that type of product to come back. And so what history taught us is that we don't do 80/20 financing anymore. We do home equity lines of credits. You have to have more equity. That has not changed. So after the crisis, you had to have the 5 to 10% into it. You had to have equity. Interest-only loans came back. It took them a long time to come back. But you don't get an interest-only loan with 5 or 10% down. You get an interest-only loan with, 20, 30, 40% down in some cases. So we are still lending via Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae with 3% down. We're still lending with 5% down. That is good debt. It's always been done with extra precaution. I don't know that that's going to go away unless we see our world, Chicago land, unless we see home prices come down faster than we can handle. Then we'll see some pullback on that because that's just responsibility in lending. But for the most part, we're not seeing that happen with home prices yet. So, and then when the economy gets going well again, we're going to be, jumbo lending just like we used to.
Yeah, you see a good pop right back. Okay.
Yep.
Great. What about I know you do a lot of new construction, right? Lending?
I love new construction.
What impact have you seen there, or is it too early to tell?
So this is a
into a bank. If I walked into Wintrust right today and asked for you to get me a loan to do a 3-flat on the 2800 block of Southport, are you guys saying, yeah, let's do it? Or what are you saying?
Unfortunately, we are not. That's a sore point, Joe. But let's be real, right? This is real talk with KP.
Right, yeah.
So the truth of the matter is the commercial world is pretty much shut down. If there's a bank doing commercial financing right now, good for them.
Mm-hmm.
They won't be able to be the only bank in town doing it because most commercial lending and financing is shut down. So our builders are feeling that heat right now. The reality is everyone's just kind of servicing what's out there. The cool thing is that will fast forward, right? So there's new construction condos out there. There's custom homes in the process of being built. That's going to be an inventory that I think when the pent up demand is released, because there's going to be that gap in construction. And if you've got buyers looking for new construction, we're going to see new construction move quickly. Because there just won't be as much inventory. But renovation financing is somewhat on hold right now. Unfortunately, that money is not as fluid as it's been. There's risk in it, and it's definitely, in my opinion, tied to COVID, to the coronavirus, because your contractors, right? Your builders, your labor, your unions, although if they are essential, they're working, but if they're non-essential, they're not working. And a lot of our, most people know 203K renovation financing, right?
Yeah, right.
Fannie home style financing. We do new build off of our portfolio. That type of lending is seeing a setback because our investors, a lot of the investors that back these 203K loans that all of the lenders make, they're headquartered at East Coast, if you will. Mm-hmm. And New York being the epicenter of, where the virus has had the most impact and tragedies, these New York investors are of the belief that we don't need to be renovating our building right now. We're in shutdown mode. Could it come back in 2 weeks? That would be awesome if it did. So again, I'm kind of living in that world, Joe, sore spot, but I'm living that world day by day. So
I knew you had some.
This is not to be heard next week. Next week it could be different.
Yeah, right. We'll bring you back in, right? So I know you do some work, and you can do work, and you have some relationships in New York. So I was going to wear my New York hat for
nice.
you. So I had it here, but then I decided I would do it. So, Kelly, we are up on our time. Where can people, if people want to reach out to you and people want to ask your advice on things, where can people get a hold of you at?
I am not as big of a social media girl as I probably should be. So good old phone call, text, email. You can hit me up on IM. I respond to that. Okay. But whatever facility. I promise to get back to people.
What's your cell phone number and your email?
773-501-6653. And my email is kprice, KPRICE @wintrustmortgage.com.
That wasn't so bad, was it, Kelly? 45 minutes of just rapping.
Rolled.
It was good. Hey, we really appreciate you. Thank you so much. Thanks for being a leader. Thank you for pouring into us. We appreciate it. And thanks for being available. And like I said, you're awesome. You're a leader in our community, and we appreciate you.
Thanks for having me, Joe.
You guys, everyone who has showed up, thank you guys again. Much love to you guys. We are off tomorrow due to the holiday weekend, going into a holiday. We are back on Monday at 12 o'clock with Adam Gurney, the real estate attorney, is going to go over closings and deals and things that he is seeing right now. So that will be a great one to do. We're going to keep going with this, guys, while we're sitting at home. So thanks for showing up. Thanks for being here. Much love to all you guys. Have a great weekend. All right. Thanks. Cheers.